But today I want to talk about a law that is probably very, very important because it's a law that brings healing. It's a law that brings healing to us as a people, brings healing to communities, it brings healing to cities, brings healing to nations, and eventually will bring healing to the world. So, and I'll call that law consensus, the law of consensus. And as we explore this law, we'll find that it has been used quite extensively through history. And it's been used for healing and also to bring unity among his people. So anyway, the law of consensus, many people think that that law is to bring an idea forth, and that idea might then we decide on whether we like that idea or how that idea should be adjusted or so forth. But actually, consensus is a law to bring healing, a law to bring healing to our people. And so we find that it was used by Israel many, many years ago when Israel went out to make peace with its neighboring countries. The first thing they did, they didn't go out and conquer a nation just to be conquering. They didn't go roughshod and start killing people and start, just slaughtering. They went in, and the first thing they did to that country, they said, "Peace be unto you." Even the angels, when they went to Sodom and Gomorrah, they came in peace. They didn't come in war. They came in peace, and Sodom and Gomorrah had time to repent. Maybe not very long, but I don't know if Yahweh sent some prophets prior to the angels coming. But at that time, that when the angels came, they came in peace. And we think of what were the angels doing there? Why did they come? Well, Yahweh has laws. When Yahweh created the heavens and the earth and everything that in them is, He created it to function a certain way. And we find that, we as mini creators, we build a car, it's made to function a certain way. You don't put water in the crankcase, and you don't put gas in the radiator, and you just don't do those things. And yet we as a people think that we can do that all day long, violating the way Yahweh created something to operate. And it just doesn't work that way. So when Israel came to the nations, they came and they said, "Peace be to you." Yeshua commented on that too. Yeshua said, when you come into a house, say, "Peace be to this house." He said, if the Son of Peace abide there, let your peace remain. In other words, then we're one. But if the Son of Peace does not abide there, let that peace return to you. Shake the dust off your feet and go your way. So this is basically, and if the peace does abide there, then they have the facility wherewith to heal. So what did Israel do when they went in to conquer a nation? They said, "Peace be to this nation." And if the Son of Peace abide there, then that was great. The next step was, do you want consensus? Do you want to consent to what? Well, there is only one thing to consent to, and that's the way Yahweh made the earth to function. The way Yahweh set up all the laws to show how we can live abundantly. So what Israel did then, they said, well, here's Yahweh's law. Yahweh's the creator. He's the only God there is. There isn't any other God. There's no other creator. And he gave us this law to live abundantly. If in our peace that we give you, we also give you Yahweh's law. And you can consent to this law. So, if the nation consented to that law, they had all the opportunities, all the blessings, everything that Israel had, these nations would have, because there was a consensus there. Not a consensus to do their own will, a consensus of Yahweh's law of how to live, His law of economics, His law of blessings, His law of multiplication. All these things went with it so that they could live abundantly. And it says in one place, and I forget, it's in Isaiah, I think it says that the priests will boast themselves, not how good of orators they were, but they will boast themselves in the wealth of the nations. In other words, they will say, wow, look at how these nations are prospering. We love this. What has Israel done in the past? In the past few years, they've gone into Africa, gone into India, they've gone into a lot of these countries, and did they boast themselves in their wealth? No, they stripped it of their wealth. That is not giving them Yahweh's law, see. So Yahweh took it away from Israel again. When the Israel nations went in there and they didn't give according to the law. By the way, what is the law? What does the law say? What can Israel take when they go in and enrich a nation? What do you think they can take? How much? 10%. 10%. That's all they're allowed. They can't take it. They can't go in there and rob a nation. They can take 10%. And so that these nations can prosper. These third world countries, or these nations that are basically not Israel, they have to receive Yahweh's blessings as well. They're not slaves. They're Yahweh's creation. He created them. And in Psalms it says, what is the Son of Man? That man is Enosh, I think, which means man of low degree. What is man of low degree that thou art mindful of him? Or what is the son of Adam that you visit him? So there's a difference. See, Yahweh's mindful. It says that not even a sparrow falls to the ground without him knowing it and caring about it. He's mindful of the sparrows. He's mindful of the grass, the trees. And it says that when His kingdom comes, the trees will lift their boughs and say, wow, this is beautiful. No feller has come up against us anymore since Babylon fell. So is Yahweh mindful of everything? He is. But He visits who? He visits the son of Adam. Because they are the ones that are to bring these blessings. They're the ones that are to present Yahweh's law. So, when Israel came to the nations, in a spirit of consensus, a couple of things happened. First of all, they presented Yahweh's law. There wasn't any choice. They didn't say, well, what do you want to do? Let's talk about it. There isn't any talking about Yahweh's law. It's the way it is, that's the way it is. Here it is, fellas. Here's Yahweh's laws. Do you want peace or do you want war? So, this is the way of cleaning up. You can either be healed. Those nations that wanted peace, they could be healed. They could have this abundant blessing. They could have this endless life of abundance. Or they can be destroyed. So does Israel destroy them? Well, Israel did destroy them in that day, but we're not living in that day today. We're living in another day of Israel, and that is our weapons of warfare not going to be carnal. Hey, you want Yahweh's law? Do you want rain? Do you want fertility in your soil? Here's the law. You can reject it if you want to. You can starve to death. You're not going to get any rain. You're not going to get any fertility in your soil. You're not going to get any of those things because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. We don't have to go out there and shoot anybody. We just need to create the fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit have a reverse side to it. And that is the same, well, peace is one of the fruits of the Spirit. And what's the reverse side to peace? It's destruction. He says it'll be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city who was presented a consensus of his law and they refused. So this day we're starting with consensus. Where is it going to start? It starts in our own families. It starts in our own community. It should be starting at our feast. We should be talking about Yahweh's law all the time. And so this law of consensus is for healing. And so how does it work in our families? Well, if we don't use consensus, in other words, in our family, we had kind of the law of our family was, not Yahweh's law, but which we felt in our family that when two young people were going together, that there'd be consensus. And so what we did on that consensus was we had both the ladies' family come together and the man's family come together, and there was a presentation of Yahweh's law and says, well, our family lives this law. And is there a consensus to that? In other words, are you willing, as a newcomer in our family, to live Yahweh's law? It's not, consensus is not a matter of saying, hey, do you like this guy? Do you like this gal? Do you like this? What do you think of him? That's not it. It's, do you, as a newcomer in our family, do you, as a foreigner of the family, do you embrace Yahweh's law? That's what consensus is about. And see, if consensus doesn't take place, there isn't any healing. Hard feelings start coming in. And when hard feelings come in, what happens? Immediately, where the hard feelings are at, we begin to create the fruits of the Spirit? No. We create hate. We create resentment. And these start coming into the family. And so, when they come in, there's no healing. We need to bring healing in. There's only one thing that can bring healing, and that is to embrace Yahweh's law. And so, if there's going to be unity in a family, if there's going to be unity in a community, if there's going to be unity in a state, there can only be unity in one thing, and that is His law. In other words, one part of the state can't practice economics, biblical economics, and another part not. It doesn't work that way. One part of the family can't use biblical economics and another one not. We have to be in unity about His law. And so consensus is when we say, yes, I will embrace Yahweh's law. So when a new person comes into an Israelite family and they embrace Yahweh's law, there's going to be unity. They don't have to embrace anything else. They don't have to worry about all the other things. We need to embrace Yahweh's law, because that's what brings healing. That's what brings unity. That's what brings joy. This is what keeps the friction out on the outside the family. So, when you look at Job, Job had a family. Do you think there was consensus in Job's family? Think there was consensus in Job's family?
I think a good amount. He could get some things for the children, right? In case they were. Well, I guess that would contradict. Yeah, I guess not.
It says that Job's children partied every, I guess, a week, was it? Anybody know? But anyway, they called all their brothers and together, and all their sisters together, and they partied. And so in the partying, see, one of the commandments is, part of His law is, one of the commandments is to honor your father and your mother. Was Job invited to those? Evidently not. Because he said, peradventure, in their drinking, they had cursed Yahweh. He sacrificed for them. See, there was no consensus in that family. The law wasn't presented, and the whole family was in unity with Yahweh's law. And there came a time when, Job was a righteous man. And there came a time when Yahweh said, well, there isn't any consensus in this family, so I'm going to change things a little bit. And so He summons all of His creation, I guess you'd call it, together. Sons of Yahweh were there, and the devil was there. And so they all presented themselves before Yahweh, and when the devil came up there, Yahweh said, have you considered my servant Job? That he's an upright man, and none quite like him? Why do you suppose Yahweh summons Satan to pay some attention to Job?
Example.
There wasn't any consensus in that family. The law was not laid down. So Job was sacrificing. And what does the scripture say? I will have obedience and not sacrifice. Yahweh doesn't want sacrifice. He doesn't want weeping on the altar of Job saying, oh, forgive them, forgive him. He wants righteousness. And so this is what there wasn't in that family. And so Yahweh says, I'm going to deal with this situation. He called up his little servant called Satan, and he says, here's Job, I want you to consider him. And Satan says, well, don't bother me, you've got a hedge about him. He's your man. And Yahweh says, well, I'm going to take the hedge away. And I want you to do what I've told you to do, what your duty is to do, Satan. And so Satan went, and what did Job have? Oils? He was sitting in this ash pot.
That's not what came first.
Yeah, he lost all his family and
First And as well as the
yeah.
animals and everything else first.
First of all, he lost all of his prestige. And so the animals went, but I don't know, did Satan do that? I don't know if he did or
It
not.
says it was plagued by the.
But anyway, whoever did
It
it,
says the fire of Elohim has fallen from heaven and has burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I only escaped to tell thee is what the servant says.
so if it fell from heaven, that must have been Yahweh there. So anyway, Yahweh dealt with this situation. Yahweh didn't want these sacrifices all the time. He wants obedience. Obedience to what? His law, the Torah. And so Yahweh took away the hedge that he had about him, and Yahweh began to allow Satan to afflict Job. By this time his children were gone, his animals were gone, and he only had his wife left, and I guess she was trying to be a good helpmate to him. She said, why don't you curse Yahweh and die? And Job didn't accept that, did he? He said, shall I receive good at the hand of Yahweh and not evil? Did he recognize Satan's hand in that? No. He said, shall I receive good at the hand of Yahweh and not evil? And so he went on through that time of suffering and whatnot. And at the end he said, I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear. In other words, here we get back into soulishness. Our five senses. He says, I've heard of you by one of my five senses, but now my eyes, no, mine eye beholdeth thee. He'd come into a spiritual perception of Yahweh that he never had before. Before he was a soulish man. After this, he was a spirit-filled man. Before this, he didn't have consensus. But after this, he was consenting to Yahweh's law. That Yahweh was righteous. That Yahweh was good. That Yahweh did all these things. So we have this commandment, which is actually not one of the 10 commandments. It says, Hear, O Israel. And that's, I don't know exactly where that's at. Some of you quick finders can maybe find it.
Deuteronomy 6:4.
Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one. Well, it doesn't only mean one Yahweh, it means that Yahweh is one. He can't be divided. See, we have a tendency to divide Yahweh. We have a tendency to try to make him many God-headed. But Yahweh is one. Anybody find it?
It's either 6:4 or 4:6. Daniel, you know, Shema. In Deuteronomy.
It's in the New Testament and the Old Testament both.
Hear, O Israel, Yahweh or Elohim is Yahweh, a unity is what this says instead of one.
Okay, that's their
And
translation.
he was right, 6:4, Deuteronomy 6.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Does that give a reference to the New Testament?
Not this one doesn't.
Because Yeshua quoted that. And I think it was when the Pharisees asked him, what's the greatest commandment? He said, I think it was when he said, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one. See, that's a little different commandment than the first commandment, which is that we must love Yahweh with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind. The second one, our neighbors, ourselves. This one is a different one that is much broader than that. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one. nothing happens outside of Yahweh's will. Nothing happens. He is the only one that is a shaker and a mover.
I think that when Yeshua said it there, that Yahweh is one, he also said, and the greatest commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart,
Yeah, I think it probably did.
neighbors thyself.
I'm getting. Let's get this together. I think it's both in Matthew and Mark, according to this.
Oh, is it? I thought it was only
There
once.
in the New Testament, that when it mentions the first and the second commands, the first half of the first one, I think in every case, in most cases, is the Shema plus. Right after that, you say you should love the Lord. The second is
And he adds
that's
that,
actually
too.
part of it.
Yeah, could be. But
This is my opinion.
But anyway, we're coming into a place now where his kingdom is at hand. And his kingdom cannot come if there's not consensus. There has to be consensus for his kingdom to come. And his kingdom, according to Daniel, starts small, the stone, the mountain, and it begins to grow. And as more and more of Yahweh's children accept his kingdom, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. And I feel that we're living in that time when his kingdom is beginning to grow. I think it's in the hearts of his children. He's written it in the heart and on the mind of his children, and they're beginning to feel comfortable or natural with it. When Yahweh talks about, for instance, when Nicodemus came to Yeshua, he said, what did he ask him? What must I do to inherit the kingdom? Was that the question? Pardon? But anyway, Yeshua said, you must be born again, born from above. Now, in the circles I grew up with, they interpreted that to mean that you're saved. In other words, you must be saved. Well, to me, saved comes from the word salvation, salvage. And what is it that has to be saved? Doesn't it always talk about the saving of the soul? So when Adam was created a living soul, that soul has been a liability to us all of our life. We make decisions based upon what feels good, what looks good, what tastes good, what smells good. That's how we make our decisions. You go into a store and they got all the apples lined up and all of them polished and they're all got the good sides sticking up. Why? They're appealing to your soul. Because it looks good. And some stores even put out an odor that makes you comfortable with the smell that's in there, appealing to your smell. So those five senses have always been our liability. They haven't been an asset. So to me, when I read about salvation, it's salvaging of the soul. It's kind of like when a coyote feels comfortable eating rabbits. That's his character. That's his inborn nature. That's his genetics, is to eat rabbits. But you take a cow and you try to get her to chase and eat rabbits, it's a totally different story. She's got a different genetics. She doesn't have the same genetics as a coyote does. And we as a people, when we're soulish, when we make our decisions based upon the soul, then we like to eat rabbits. You know, I mean, it's just like, that's our nature that we have. But when Yahweh changes that nature, when He writes His law within us, He changes our genetics. He said it in John, it says that He's giving us an incorruptible seed. What is an incorruptible seed? Well, it's an incorruptible seed. Doesn't mean anything else. It means it's incorruptible. And you think about us as a people and you say, that's us? We can ever get to be incorruptible?
Maybe they don't know, the children may not know what incorruptible means. You can't destroy it.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't destroy it. You can't mess it up. You can't,
Aberrated.
you know, I guess we could put words to it forever. But whatever, it's not possible for that to happen.
Right.
So He's placing within His children today an incorruptible seed, and He's writing His law of consensus on our heart. This is what we desire. We're not going to say, I don't know if I like that law or not. And He wants us to be born again. So what is born? If born again doesn't mean salvation, what does it mean? Well, let's take a look at Mary. It said that she was filled with the Holy Ghost and overshadowed by the Most High. So when the Most High overshadowed her, He placed an incorruptible seed in her, which was part of Yeshua's makeup. I mean, that was His character then. And so, do you think He's going to do the same thing to His children, the siblings of Yeshua? Is He going to have Yeshua as He's going to say, well, this is my firstborn son, and take a look at him, and here's all my other siblings, His siblings, and don't pay any attention to them because they're kind of cruddy looking and they're not very bright and all that. Do we expect that from a perfect father? Perfect father has perfect sons every single time. He shares His incorruptible seed with them. It's not a corruptible seed, it's an incorruptible. And so the siblings of Yeshua, which are His children, His sons, are going to have a consensus in His law. So, with consensus comes the opportunity to heal. And as we begin to go out into our neighborhood, and as we begin to go out into our cities, as we begin to go out to the nations, we're being sent there not to destroy, but to heal. We're not going to say, well, y'all like Yahweh's laws, then too bad. So there's going to come the healing of the nations, and it says that everyone that calleth upon Him shall have salvation. Everyone that calleth upon Him. So our duty is to make sure that consensus is not compromised.
Right.
In other words, what is consensus? It's an acceptance of Yahweh's law. It's an acceptance of how He laid down that we should live our lives. And if they want that blessing, the nations want that blessing, they're going to have rain. If the nations want that blessing, they're going to have peace. If the nations want that blessing, they're going to have joy. If the nations don't want that blessing, if there's not a consensus among the nations, well, they'll get no rain. It isn't that they'll be destroyed all at once. It's that Yahweh withhold. And Yahweh took Israel out of Egypt. He says, I'm taking you from this rose garden that you've been in, where the water comes down and you stick your foot in the shovel and you water this plant and you water that plant. You're in the most fertile valley that the world has ever seen. All the minerals that came down the Nile River, He says, I'm taking you from that place and I'm putting you in this place where I personally will hear your consensus, so that when you consent to Yahweh's law, then I will bring rain. But if you don't consent to it, you're going to be in a desert. They're not going to water their plants, sticking their shovel in and changing the water. They're going to water their plants by consensus to Yahweh's law. So, and this is the time that we are coming into as well. The spoilers of the earth are well and alive. And He said He would destroy those that destroy the earth. And the spoilers of the earth are well and alive. But are His children well and alive? Are we consenting to His law? Are we studying His law day and night? What good does it do us to have a business and not know the law of economics? Are we stumbling around? Absolutely. It doesn't do us a lot of good to have anything if don't understand His law. Everything is going to operate just the way He said it would, right down the line. So, anyway, I thought I'd maybe share this with you at this time. And there's another spare space somewhere later on. I'll share with you another law. I love law.
That was very easily understood now for every age, I think.
Something crossed my mind when you talk about the incorruptible seed and so forth and whatnot, with context of the law, and I haven't got, just crossed my mind. And one of the parables of the kingdom was talking about the seed that came on different soil, and it had different responses based upon the soil. Well, it didn't say the seeds were all different. See, the seeds were all the same. It says it's the word. It's the word. Not necessarily a supernatural being, but also that which is written, which is part of His law. And it's interesting. I'm wondering if that consensus is a thing that would be the aspect of healing, changing the soil for those examples. Because the different examples, it explains. People who have concerns and worries about the world, and people who this and who that. But if you're in good soil, it actually germinates and does wonderfully.
Well, I think we're that soil that the seed's planted in. We can be more consenting to His law, or we can be less consenting. I don't think He's going to destroy us because we have made a mistake, or because whatever. We'll just have a less yield. We're the soil. His seed is perfect.
Now, if you want wanted that New Testament reference?
I did.
Okay, it's in Mark 12:29 and 30, and it's interesting that in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy 6:4, when it says, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim is Yahweh a unity," or is one. And then it says, "And thou shalt love Yahweh with thy Elohim with all thine heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these things I command ye this day shall be in thine heart, that thou should teach them diligently to your children." Then it tells the whole thing about morning and evening, and as you walk, and as you sit down, and as you stand up. Bind them as a sign. Well, then, the scribes were trying to test Yeshua, and they asked him, "What is the first commandment of all?" To see what he would say. And that's what he said then, "Hear, O Israel." And Yeshua answered him, "The first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim is Yahweh." They say, maybe you know how to say it, Daniel, A-C-H-O-D.
Echad.
Akkad, which means is one or unity. And then it says, "And thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like unto this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these." And the scribe said, "Thou hast said the truth, for there is one Elohim, and there is none other but Him." So he convinced the scribe by quoting right out of the Old Testament,
Yeah.
which they would have known.
But see, to me, when it says, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one," you have to broaden yourself, because in that is an understanding of who Yahweh is and how He is. See? And to love Him, it's kind of like, as we behold Him, we're changed into that same image. See, we can love Him only to the portion that we can behold Him. And so if we're beholding Him as not quite the God that we think He should be, that's what we're changed into. And it's the same way with loving Him. We can only love Him to the point that we can understand Him and know Him. But to say, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one," to me, that broadens it out to say that where it says, "I create evil, and I create good. I, Yahweh, do all these things. I create light, and I create darkness." And we have a tendency, see, to think that maybe the devil created darkness and Yahweh created light. He didn't. Yahweh is one. He doesn't have a division in Himself. If we're playing checkers with Yahweh, He's playing both ends of that checkerboard. There isn't two teams that's playing with Him. He's the only team. That's what I get out of "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one." And if I get a broken arm or get all the places I've been in my life and survive, there's only one reason. And that's because Yahweh is one. He brought me into that situation, and He brought me out of that situation. You know, and it all happened so fast, there's no way I can say Yahweh saved me. I mean, it just, you know, things happen, they're happening too fast. But Yahweh is one. And so, once He brings a sickness on us, we say, "Well, Yahweh, this is You. What are you going to do about it now?" And when we have that kind of faith, if we believe that much that Yahweh is the one, then I think He will take care of it just like He brought it on. Of course, you know, that's something I haven't totally experienced yet, but so at this point, it's a belief I have. But that to me is one of the most powerful scriptures. "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is one." See, that doesn't allow room for anything else. Nothing. Everything has to begin in Him and end it. Well, maybe if the musicians come up, maybe we'll have some music.
Good, yeah.